welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you were, I don't know if you could hear that. If you are new here, my name is Susan and I am a content creator. I'm also a content strategist as my full-time job. I co-own and co-host Dream Life Loading with my best friend Sky, which is a self-improvement business and podcast. And I'm a 10-time self-published author. Today's video I'm very excited for. This is our positive birth experience as a first-time mom with no epidural. I did use nitrous oxide, so I don't think I can call this unmedicated, but we didn't have an epidural, which if you have an epidural, good choices, like you made good life choices. I was regretting it around 9 centimeters, but we will get into all of that in the video, so let's jump into it. There are two things I want to address before we start this video. One, any way that you birth your baby and get them happily and safely and healthily into this world is a miracle in itself. I am just sharing my story because it was a positive experience and I was really anxious going into labor and delivery, like not the day of, but just in general. When I got pregnant, I was so scared that I was going to have to give birth at some point. So I wanted to just share my story so that other maybe new moms can watch and just have a little bit of ease knowing that someone out there did have a good experience. Or I know that I still love watching birth story videos on YouTube. So if you are a mom or you just want to share this experience with us, then I'm so happy you are here. And lastly, before we get into the story, I want to personally thank my labor and delivery nurses. These women were like angels sent from above. I cannot express how safe and validated they made me feel. They were just the sweetest kind of souls. I was obviously in my most vulnerable state and I did not feel vulnerable at all. I felt supported. I felt secure. I felt cared for and loved. And now my husband's calling, so I gotta cut this and we'll fire back up after. Sorry for the interruption. So back to labor and delivery nurses. They literally just made me feel so safe and supported. It was almost like having two big sisters in the room, and every once in a while I would just I could hear them the whole time, but sometimes I would actively listen to what they were saying, and just their words of encouragement were so reassuring and validating, and there is nothing like it. I am just so incredibly thankful for the medical staff and team that I had the entire time we were in the hospital. Every single person that we came across was just so kind and sweet, and just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You guys made the experience, honestly, because I remember at one point I was feeling really scared. Just the pain was so intense, and I literally said, I was like, I'm feeling really scared. And I just feel like they both the nurses that were in the room at the time were just so kind and validating, and I knew that I was safe and I was going to be okay, simply because those two were there. And it made me feel so good. So thank you, labor and delivery nurses and all healthcare staff. I know that you guys do not have an easy job, but I really appreciate everything that you did for my family and I while we were in the hospital. So let's start when my labor started, which was technically July 3rd, 2024 at 3 a.m. I woke up and I was just in so much pain. My lower back hurt, my hips hurt. If I rolled from one side to the other, it literally felt like I had a coconut in between my legs. Like her head was just very low. But this was not new. This was the pain and discomfort I had been in for a couple of weeks at this point. So I didn't think anything of it, but it was bad enough that I couldn't lay in bed anymore. I tried for probably 25 minutes and I was like, I gotta get up. I physically cannot lay here because I'm in so much pain. So get the dogs out of here. So I had to go. I went and got my yoga ball. And I sat on my yoga ball at the end of the bed and I stacked pillows up and I kind of leaned over like this. And I sat like that, tried to sleep until 5:30. And then I was like, I'm getting up for the day. I'm just too uncomfortable. So I got up, and then I would say around 6:30 is when I realized I was having contractions, but I honestly just thought they were Braxton Hicks. The week before, we did 26 hours of Braxton Hicks contractions that were 6 to 7 minutes apart consistently, literally for 26 hours. So I had no hope that this was the real deal. I, at this point, had convinced myself that I was going to need a 41-week induction because I just didn't think that she was ever going to come out. I had lost all hope. I had lost all hope. So that is what we did for the morning time. And then I was supposed to go into the office for work. And I texted my manager and I was like, I am so uncomfortable. I've been up since 3 a.m. Is it okay if I work remote today? She was like, yes, of course. Which I've never done. I've never not made it to an in-office day. So I knew that it was intense enough for me to call out, essentially, that I needed to stay home. And so I didn't start timing contractions until 9 or 10. And that's when they were getting more intense and not like super, super painful, but just like, okay, I need to kind of stop what I'm doing, like pause a minute, breathe, and then get back into it. And I sat on my yoga ball the entire shift at work, from home, my work from home shift. And I feel like it was around, well, my dad showed up for lunch around noon. So I clocked out, I came down here and we had lunch at the table. And I was like, wow, these contractions are like 4 minutes apart. It's been like an hour and they're like 4 minutes apart. So we finished lunch. I went back upstairs. I was trying to make it through the work day. Chris had a really busy work day. I knew that he had like kind of a stressful day going on. So I was like, if I can last till 4, then we can go. But I still didn't think that this was real. So around 1:30, yeah, no, it would have been like 1. I called, and I called my OB's office and I said, this is what's going on. I don't know if it's labor, but this is how far apart they are. And the triage nurse was like, okay, like I guessing he's going to want you to come in. I will talk to the on-call doctor and I will call you back. And so she called me back and was like, yeah, they want you to come in. And I said to her, I was like, my ego is like a little too big. I really hope that this is real because I'm going to be so embarrassed if I get sent home. I just feel like as a first-time mom, I feel like everyone gets sent home at least once. So I was just like, there's no way that this is real, but we'll go up, get monitored, and then come home. So I called Chris. I was like, I need you to come pick me up and bring me to the hospital. And we might be having a baby today. Like, I really don't know. And around this time, I took a video of me during a contraction. I'll post it in here, or I'll like add it to this video. Woo! And this was when I was like, yeah, I think that this is real. Like, I actually need to like breathe through these. But again, still fully convinced that I'm not having a baby today. So let me just check my notes. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So yeah, so Chris picked me up around 2. I clocked out. I was like, I'm done for the day. We went to the hospital. And then I didn't know what happens when you get to the hospital. Like, I figured they would check my cervix. But outside of that, I had no clue what was going to happen. So they bring us to this room. We were the only people on the maternity floor at the time. And they hooked me up to a monitor. One to track the baby's heart rate and one to track my contractions. And she was like, it'll be like 20 minutes and then we'll come back in. And I was like, sounds good. So I sat in the bed and I got monitored, and then she came back and she's like, yep, your contractions are like, they do seem to be getting stronger. We'll do a cervical check and then we'll see if they're going to keep you or not. So they did my check and I was 3.5 centimeters. And I don't know the rules. I feel like I read somewhere that they keep you if you're at 4 or more. I was so close that they were like, we're going to wait an hour and then we'll check you again. and do the monitoring again. So they unhooked me from the monitors. I walked around, Chris and I walked around the hospital. And then by the time we were probably halfway through our walk, and I had one contraction that literally almost set me on my ass. I literally had to like bend over a table. Like I was unwell. And that was the first really strong one I had. And I was like, oof, like I don't think we're going home. I had packed all of our bags, but I left them at home because I thought that if I brought the bags, it was going to jinx it and we'd get sent home. So I did not bring the bags to the hospital. So when that contraction hit, I was like, after I get checked, they're going to tell us we're staying, and then I need you to run home and grab all of our stuff because we didn't bring anything. So he was like, okay. So we went back to our room because they like when I say I go for a walk, we walked like outside the hospital, inside the hospital, like we were all over the place. We came back and the doctor was actually there this time because up until now it had just been the nurses. It was just the nurses. And then they checked me again and I was, I think, 5 centimeters dilated. Yes, I was. The second time they monitored me. And my contractions were like, they kind of came in towards the end of one and I was bent over the bed with pillows propped up and I was like breathing through them. They're like, yeah, this is getting more intense. And for reference, my mom had really fast labors and births. So with that in mind, they were like, we're keeping you. So I got admitted. My doctor was like, you're not leaving here pregnant. And I was beaming. I was so excited. Pregnancy was really hard for me. If you have not seen the I'm struggling video, go watch that. That was filmed on Monday. And then this video started taking place on Wednesday. So 2 days before I had my daughter, I was really going through it. feel like I've been going through it the whole pregnancy, but that video really sums up where I was at the end of pregnancy. And he was like, you're not leaving here pregnant. We're having a baby tonight. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is real. And I was like, I'm at 5 centimeters. Like I'm halfway there. Like that's kind of crazy. So they said that I was being admitted. They gave me my IV in my hand because I was GBS positive. So I needed antibiotics. And then I was like, can I please take a bath? And they were like, absolutely. So Chris ran me a hot bath. I got in. It was so nice. It literally took the contraction pain. At this point, the pain was probably like a 5 or a 6. And it brought it down to like a 3 just being in the water. So I really appreciated that. So I took a bath for a while. And then I was feeling soggy and kind of hot. And my IV, they had like wrapped it, was getting kind of steamy like inside. And I was like, I'm going to get out. So I got out and then the contractions were much more intense than when I had gotten in. The pain was like a 7 or probably a 7. And then I was like, I want to get back in the tub. So, or maybe, I don't think I asked for that. I think Chris was like, I'm going to run you another tub. You can get in. So I got in the tub and then I wasn't even in there for probably 10, 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm feeling a lot of pressure in my butt. So I think I should get out. Chris called the nurses and they're like, yeah, get out. We're going to check you. And then we'll see if we need to call the doctor in. They checked me. I was like a 6 or a 7 at this point. And they did call the doctor. They're like, you need to come in. She's progressing fast. So at this point, I'm progressing like in a centimeter an hour is the pace that we were at. So I had said to Chris, I was like, I think we'll have her around midnight, like or sometime after 12, if we're going on a centimeter an hour. So the doctor, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. When my doctor said we're having a baby tonight, he pulled up a chair and said, all right, let's talk about the plan. What do you want? What do you want for pain management? Just what's the plan? So we went over my birth plan, which I was like, I am open to an epidural, but that's kind of last resort. After I'd gotten my IV, I really didn't want to mess around with needles anymore. I pass out with needles. I have since I was 3. So I just didn't want a giant one going into my back. And the catheter situation, all the stuff. I was like, I would rather not if I can avoid it. So I was like, I will try the ball. I had already been using the ball, but I was like, I'll try the ball, I'll try the peanut ball, I'll try a bath, nitrous oxide, then the shot. It's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in the shot, but I know that there's a shot they can give you. But the shot is you can't have it that close to actual birth because it can like transmit to the baby, and then it's harder for them to wake up, or they're just groggy, so they don't like to do that if you're super close to pushing. And then epidural. That was my lineup. That was my roster for pain management at the beginning. Oh, big yawns. So we went over that. So now back to where we were. They called the doctor. I was 6 or 7, probably, I feel like I must have been 7 centimeters dilated. So at this point they checked me, and then I was in so much pain. I was like, I can't get out of bed. So I was laying on my left side holding Chris's hand, and the nurse got me a peanut ball, and that helped a lot. It was just like my hips were in so much pain. So I laid like that for a long time. Then so there were 2 nurses. One nurse was for the baby. The other nurse was for me, but obviously like both helped me in any way they could. So like I said, I was holding Chris's hand, and she was applying counter pressure, and then they got the forms for nitrous oxide, which is just laughing gas you get at the dentist. And they got me my mask, and they got me hooked up, and they're like, okay, so the next contraction, breathe into it and then breathe out, and then it should just take the edge off of the contraction. So the first time I used it, it was fine. I mean, I kind of took the edge off, but I didn't really. Excuse you. You okay? Oh, God bless you. It didn't, it took the edge off, but like I didn't feel anything crazy different. The second time I must have really actually learned how to inhale it, and it literally felt like the biggest buzz. It felt like I had 2 glasses of wine, and I was like, Boozy Susie is back. And it was just wild. It was wild. And so that was fun for the probably centimeters 7 to 8. That was fun. Because it was like, the contraction was hard, but I was breathing and I was doing good. And then I'd come out of the contraction and I felt kind of loopy, and that was like fun for a minute. And then we hit transition and shit got real. So for transition, I don't even know if they measured me at 8 centimeters. Like at this point, I was in a lot of pain. But my nurse had suggested doing a different position and being on like all 4s, but having the bed tilted up like a chair, and my like leaning over the chair, and then being like on my knees. I don't know if that visual is helpful. I would show you, but I don't want to get into that position at the moment. So I was doing that, and I had my nitrous oxide, and Chris stood next to me and was just kind of talking to me. And this is when things got pretty intense. And around this time is when I started seeing my contractions in color, which is so weird. And I should ask my doctor when I see him, because I don't know if that's the nitrous oxide or if I was just like so in my head that that's why this was happening. But it was like, I'd shut my eyes, I would be breathing through the contraction, and when I got to the peak of the contraction, it would be like, almost like really vibrant watercolors that would like move. So like at first they were like a light color, so like a light pink, a light orange, and then as we were progressing, the colors were getting darker. So like then when I started to like, I don't know if I was yelling. I feel like I was yelling. I might have just been like moaning, whimpering, maybe yelling. There was like dark blue, a deep red, a dark green. And then when I got to 9.5 centimeters, they had to check me again. And I was 9.5, and I got stuck there for probably an hour, I think. I have no concept of time at this point. This is me going off of what Chris had said. And so when they checked me, I was like, I can't get back into that position. So then I was laying on my side again, and we were doing kind of the same thing. Counter pressure. I had the peanut ball, but I feel like I didn't have the peanut ball for that long because I was in so much pain in my back and my hips. And so I was holding Chris's hand, and this is when things got so intense, and I couldn't really talk at this point. And I remember being like, Chris, I can't do this, or I can't do this, or shaking my head no. And like the nurses were like, you can do this, you're doing this, you're doing so good. And Chris is like being so reassuring and just talking me through everything. And I was like, I took my mask off, and I was like, I feel really scared and I'm gonna throw up. And so I don't know if I hoisted myself up, or I think people helped me. and I was like on the edge of the bed. You guys can't see my whole body. On the edge of the bed, keeled over, but kind of like propped up because I felt like I was going to sit on her head. And they handed me those like blue hospital puke bags, and I filled it. I puked so much. It was like an exorcism, and I'm puking and I can feel the bed just getting soaking wet. So I, at this point, am like, this is beyond exorcism level. Like, this is, I didn't even feel embarrassed, but I was just like, I'm literally pissing myself in front of 4 people. Like, I cannot believe this is happening. But again, I was in so much pain and just everything was so intense. So I'm projectile vomiting, peeing myself, or so I think I'm peeing myself. I filled like 2 of those puke bags, and then I spit into a third. And then I was like, I felt a lot better stomach wise. Still hips, back, pelvis hurting. And so I remember so at this point, I knew that there were people in the room. I knew that everyone was still there, and I could kind of hear them, but I was in so much pain that I wasn't really listening to them. As I'm like finishing up puking, I remember kind of looking up. Chris had backed up because a nurse had stepped in to be close to me to hold the bag. And my doctor was in the room at the time. And I remember him looking at Chris and saying, "I'm sorry, this is really hard to watch." It was really hard to be doing, to be honest with you. Oh, hello. Do you need me? 1 second. Okay, so I'm puking and peeing. That comes to an end, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I just I'm peeing everywhere. And it was like, I didn't even know that I had that much fluid in me. I felt like I was swimming in a lake by the end of it. And so they were like, I don't think, like, you might have peed a little bit, but they're like, we don't think you were really peeing. We think that was your amniotic fluid. And so I can't remember if he broke my water before the puking or after the puking. I don't know. I'd have to ask Chris. We'd have to ask Dad. So then he checked me again, and he was like, you're still 9.5 centimeters. And at this point, he was like, it's just such a small lip of your cervix left. He's like, if you want to start pushing, like, I feel comfortable with that. Like, you can start pushing. And my nurse was like, honestly, it's probably going to feel better to push against the pain than to just be sitting in it. So I was like, I'm down to try it. Like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get this baby out. So, I'm just making sure that I have all my notes. Yeah. So, I was just in so much pain. Pushing did not feel like how I thought it was going to feel. So anyways, they took the bottom of the bed off, got the stirrups up, and he asked me what position I wanted to push in, which I do really appreciate now. But in the moment, I was like, I can't move. Like, I was on my back because they had checked me, and I was like, literally was in so much excruciating pain that I couldn't move. And my plan going into it, I wanted to push either on all fours or on my side, but I knew I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed by the pain. I still had my nitrous oxide at this point. Well, I had it the whole time, but just preface it with that. So it felt like my hips, back, and pelvis were literally going to shatter. I thought that I was going to have broken bones by the end of this. So I pushed for 45 minutes, and then like, they were like, we can see the head and all. He was like, do you want to touch the head? And I was like, no, thank you. I will just touch her when she comes out. And so Chris had my right leg, my nurse had my left leg, which thank goodness, because looking back now, there's no possible way I could have held my legs back the way I needed to on my own. Absolutely not. And the other thing was, the thing about pushing I was so surprised about was I didn't know, well, one, I didn't know how to do it, but two, the first couple times I was pushing and I was running out of air and I was like breathing out. I realized I was pushing like I was lifting weights. Like, you know, when you lift something really heavy and to kind of like get that last little pump or to get where you need to go, you breathe out, like you breathe out. You're not supposed to do that when you're pushing out a baby, because I don't know why, but you need all the air in your lungs and you like hold your breath and bear down as hard as you can. So that was intense. And then pushing just felt like, this is going to sound so weird, and I don't know why that this is how this felt. It felt like I was getting, you know, when you go to the dentist and they roll up gauze and like block your mouth wide open or like jack it open, that is how pushing felt. It felt like someone was shoving gauze and prying open all my holes down there. So that was interesting. And then after 45 minutes and a lot of pushing and a lot of yelling, because I feel like the first push I would push, and then the second push I would yell in between, like after I was done pushing. And then the third push, because I would push for 3 pushes for 10 seconds each for each contraction. And then in between contractions, I was breathing the nitrous oxide. And I do remember at one point during transition, I wasn't getting a break. Like my contractions were not stopping. And I remember just whimpering like, they're not stopping. And my nurses were, like I said, so reassuring. They're like, that's a good sign. Like, that means like you're so close, you're almost going to meet her. And I was just convinced that my whole body was breaking. And I know that that doesn't sound positive, but it was, because at the end of the day, like, I knew that it was being productive, and I knew that the pain was temporary, and I knew that I would be holding my child so soon. And you were so worth every second of it. I'd do it 100 times over if I knew that I would still get you. Oh, and this was surprising. Towards the last, again, I have no concept of time, so this could be completely inaccurate. Apologies if I'm lying. But after every contraction, my nurse would use a Doppler to track her heart rate. Towards the end, every time she touched my stomach, it physically hurt so bad. And I don't know why, but like just the Doppler on my skin hurt so bad. Hey, what's wrong? What's wrong, honey? You all right? Do you need to burp? You did just eat. Placenta, delivering the placenta was not painful at all. That just felt like a jellyfish falling out of me. It was weird. It was definitely weird, but it did not hurt. Huh. Did not hurt compared to your dome. And then holding, so they were like, open your, excuse you. Do you feel better now? That could have been chunky all over mom. We're playing risky business here without a burp cloth. So my eyes had been shut pretty much the whole time I was pushing. My eyes were closed. Like, I was not looking around. I was very much in my own head. And so they're like, open your eyes. And I open my eyes, and the doctor has her, and she's like kind of upside down. And they gave her, like, handed her to me. And she was so clean. They said that she was one of the cleanest babies they'd ever seen. Huh, you're such a clean baby. And holding her was like someone gave me the missing piece to my soul. It was like life made sense. And the second she came out, everything stopped. The pain stopped. I remember feeling a little bit of the ring of fire, but it wasn't like, the ring of fire was nothing compared to the intense pain I was having in my back and hips. And then when her shoulders came out, I remember him being like, just a gentle push. And I literally thought my pee hole ripped open. It did not. But I really was convinced that it, oh, hold on. Clean diaper changes everything. So like I was saying, the second that she came out, all of the pain evaporated. And that was what was wild to me, was everything stopped hurting. I mean, literally everything. So I'm holding her. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Chris is like standing over us looking at her. Like, it's just one of those like movie scenes. It just felt so perfect. Like, it felt like my whole life made sense. Someone just handed me the missing piece to my soul, and all was well. Like, we lived happily ever after. That is exactly how this felt. So I'm holding her. They're suctioning stuff out of her like face. Chris cuts the umbilical cord. And then they're like, all right, you have like two small lacerations. They're grade 1 tears, but I'm going to give you some sutures. So he gives me the first shot of Novocaine or whatever it is, lidocaine, whatever, to numb me. And I involuntarily kind of like moved up. I was like, I am so sorry. I wasn't trying to move. But I was still holding her, and she was having kind of a hard time breathing. Nothing like serious, but she just had a lot of amniotic fluid still stuck in her face and her lungs. So I offered her to the nurse. I was like, do you want to take her over to that like the crib thing? I was like, and you can get the stuff out of her face and he can finish stitching me up and then bring her back. And she was like, yes. Like, I didn't want to ask, but that would make everyone's life a whole lot easier. So she takes the baby, and I said, Chris, you can go with Julia. So he went with the baby, and then I'm just getting stitched up, which honestly, it didn't hurt that bad. Like, once that first shot of Novocaine, he's like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just really sensitive down there in general. So once that happened, like the actual stitches, I didn't feel at all. And I only had 3, I think. I had 2 internal and then 1 on the side. So that was not bad at all. And the first thing I said to him, I was like, I think I was still holding the baby at the time, but I looked down and I was like, do I still have an asshole? And he laughed and he was like, yes, you still have an asshole, but even if you didn't, I would build you a new one. So that I was appreciative of that. And so then she was born, and I had 2 to 3 stitches, and like it literally felt like my personality came back the second she came out. And not just like, I'm not meaning just from like labor. I mean, the me I was before I was pregnant came back to my body. And I have not seen my doctor. I have not been diagnosed with this, but I really think I was struggling with prenatal depression now that I'm a week postpartum, and I still feel the same way I felt the second she came out. And it was like I just came back to myself. And I think it was a combination of all the physical pain I had been in. It was like compounding. It was a long 9 months. And then emotionally, like the last 2 weeks of my pregnancy, I cried every single day for 4 hours minimum about whatever it could have been, for so many reasons. And so I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to talk to my doctor about it when I see him at my next appointment, but I am self-diagnosing myself for the interim, because I just can't think of any other explanation as to why I felt it wasn't real. Like, yes, some of it was relief when she was born, but just I feel like myself, and it's been steady. Like, it has not been wavering. It has been consistent since the second she was born. And it was just one of those things. It's been crazy. So that is my positive birth experience with no epidural. And that is not me bragging about not having an epidural. It was one of those things where I legitimately felt like I was managing the pain until 9.5 centimeters. And at that point, it was too late to get one. Next time around, I think I'd probably do it the same way, only because supposedly you have your second baby faster than your first. Realistically, I was in intense pain for 4 hours, I think, right? I had her at 12:59 on the 4th of July. I should have prefaced that. We have a little 4th of July baby. But yeah, I just feel like I would probably do it the same way with the nitrous oxide. But again, every pregnancy is different. Every labor is different. So if I was in a situation the pain was way more intense than it was with her, then absolutely sign me up for an epidural. But also just as, you know, whether it's inspiration or empowerment, if you are someone who is toying with the idea of not getting an epidural, like, it is possible. You can do it. And a big thing that I just kept in mind the whole time, and I tried to remind myself, once the pain got really intense, it was hard to be even thinking about anything other than the pain. But 2 things was just focus on your breathing. And then the second thing was keep your jaw relaxed, because when I was getting into a lot of pain, hey, you're okay. You're right. Oh, do you need hugs? Are you okay? You're all right. Yeah, you're all right. You're just talking. You're just talking. When I was getting into a lot of pain, just keeping my... Oh. Come here. Come here. Oh, sweetie. Sweetie. You want me to put you down for a real nap? That's not your hungry cry. So do you have more gas? Newborns. It's like one of 4 things. You have a clean diaper. You already ate. So either you have gas or you want me to snuggle you and put you down for a nap. So which one is it? Which one is it? Sorry. Just keeping my jaw loose. And that really did help me relax. At least relax enough where, like, don't fight the pain. Because if you fight the pain, like, that's when it hurts more, I felt like. So just try to stay as calm and relaxed as you can. Yeah, stay calm and relaxed. Thank you guys so much for watching. So little Miss Julia was born on 4th of July at 12:59 a.m. And she is, yes, big smiles. She has been absolutely perfect. I know I'm biased because she's my baby, but we love her so much, and she's adjusted so well, and we are all doing so well at home. The dog is adjusted. Chris and I are getting into a routine. And we couldn't be more obsessed or blessed or thankful. So that is our positive birth experience, and come back next week or maybe later in this week. I don't know when the videos are going up, because I'm going to talk about our first week postpartum, and you can expect all things motherhood from my channel. Like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.